And fifth, why I'm never satisfied, because the result, even if well made, looks like every other good result in every other film. Because I lack the clarity and beauty of natural light, because I lack the organic speciality and three-dimensionality that natural light gives. In other words, traditional lighting methods tend towards the light soup. If I want to have a soft general mood in a space, it is very difficult to song this, meaning that for the time being everything is soft. Everything looks as if it is doused with a yogurt. To create contrast, I have to intensify my zonings and then, with even more power, light a closer. And in order to halfway control and modulate this melange, I need stacks of light-destroying tools to restore shadow zones, to form and direct light flows, etc. What a waste of energy, economically and aesthetically. Around the end of the 90s, this plunged me into a veritable crisis. I even wanted to give up my profession, even though I had access to any piece of equipment that I could ever have desired. The crisis remained because I simply couldn't capture light in its essence and as an appearance, not as I wanted it. Whatever I did, the light came from lamps, but I wanted it to come from the image itself. I wanted to make light as I found it in nature and in the works of great painters. I had my visions, but in practice, I only knew how things shouldn't be. It didn't improve quality assessment. And merely to take part in an arms race as to then make it high gloss, that was never interesting. This was my creative motive, to think about different ways of making light. Whenever I visit one of our well-stocked rental houses, I have the feeling that I'm walking around in a, at least, paramilitary equipment warehouse. Martial material, the smell of thick rubber, cables with a whiff of dust and rust. Without wanting to deny some undoubted technical advances, I have to say that it is really remarkable that when we use the traditional lamps, we are still shoving a bulb backwards and forwards in order to bundle or scatter its light through a lens. Mostly through a lens invented in 1822 by the genius Mr. Fresnel, who increased the reach of light from a lighthouse. 1822 for a lighthouse. Or we still, for example, half the efficiency of dazzling lights through so-called glare suppressors, which then compels us, in order to achieve enough light, to set up a second dazzling lamp, which glares in turn needs suppressing and similar nonsense. Very often we begin with a fundamental error, which then needs correcting with loss-making resources. In other words, further mistakes. I have become aware of how much we in the film industry are marking time when it comes to lighting. The standstill in this area is incredible. Although, or despite the fact that everything in it is constantly getting bigger, thicker, more powerful, and also more expensive. You just can't think light with lamps. Thinking about light, what it is, how it works, and what it can do, has not taken place and is not taking place. The couple of textbooks that exist on lighting prove this to me. Always the same recipes, always starting out from the tools. It seems to me as they are talking about the hammer and the nail, but not about the picture that mentioned already. Thus, when we take a look at the development of lighting tools in this regard, it cannot be denied that for decades very little has happened. And how much all this determines and molds our working practices would seem not to have penetrated our consciousness at all, and is not discussed today. Because tools not only have their imprint on form and affect aesthetics, but also exert a determinative influence on what happens on the set. Precisely these dictates I did not want to submit to. It was not me who was unable to fulfill the conditions of the dictate, not professional enough, or some other saw it, but the dictates were unable to fulfill my expectations. That's how I saw it. This was the real impulse for me to search for another way. In this context, we have reached a point, technologically speaking, where the questions of sufficient light has simply become obsolete. Thank God. I say this is really progress, because now we are free to create with light. Finally, lighting no longer means just making bright. Surely it cannot really be only a matter of us cinematographers making sure that we don't glare our lens, but the actors we don't care about. We terrorize actors and directors with what we call technical necessities. We blind them, they sweat, they can hardly open their eyes anymore. It is really a brutal affair. We steal their imaginative space by occupying the whole set with equipment. I hope you understand me right, it's a bit exaggerated and it's many expectations, but I have to bring it to the point. My starting point lies in reducing. I want to set that it's as free as possible, and I want as few hindrances as possible. I want to create with light. This was my practical motive, to think about other ways of lighting a set. And in this way, the basic idea for the Singular Reflect Lighting System came about, the CRLS. It should do what natural light does. It utilizes the ways that light takes of its own accord. And suddenly half of the usual pool of lighting equipment became superfluous. It is difficult to put this in numbers because the requirements can be very different. I just think about original set or studio. But from my experience of the last 12 years, I can say that as a result of CRLS, our total expenditure has decreased in a ratio between 1 to 7 and 1 to 10. Suddenly, 1,200 watt from an HMI bulb is an incredible amount. The generator is needed by the hairdryer and the coffee machine. We mostly do it with normal wall sockets. This almost automatically causes a reduction in the overall lighting costs. Bright volumes, setup, dismantling, set changing times. It affects the entire logistic of the shooting schedule. But by the time the system was developed, saving was not an issue at all. This came about, so to speak, of its own accord and as a side effect, as a result of thinking differently about lighting. My primary concern was that I would be able to make light in a much freer and more flexible way. The actors feel more comfortable, they do not sweat, and they gain a free set, their imaginative space. It is not very inspiring for an actress to sit there and have to say, I love you, when there are a number of tripods and sandbags standing in her field of vision. Only when and after I concerned myself with light did I find answers. I wonder why most of the lamp constructors, if I can call them so, do not seem to do this. Why they still only view light as a purely technical, physical entity. And, that was very important, I have looked out of the box of our industry. Who else then works with light? More people and profession than we might think. Architects, for example, or lighting designers in a wide variety of areas. Or look at light as a tool right down to the nanorealm, or light as a measuring instrument, information carrier, etc. Compared to all this, we are just niche users. And suddenly everything became clear to me. I was very much helped in this through meeting up and again, becoming friend with my first light teacher, Christian Bartenbach. In his light laboratory in Austria, near Innsbruck, I relearned the basics of technical lighting, and I saw how light technicians tackle a wide variety of lighting tasks and how they solve them. Whether this was illuminating an airport, supermarkets, a restaurant, or developing a LED street lamp. And I discovered synergy effects that arise when art and technology meet. It is not easy to make this flirtation between art and technology. It's really incredible how we ignore each other, I must say, because the technicians ignore us as we ignore them. But there's knowledge, treasure of knowledge, under the carpet. For me, at any rate, it was clear that this was a way of getting out of my dead end. The Cine-Reflect lighting system, Berger Bartenbach, now began to take specific shape. It was clear that we needed a clean parallel beam as a light source, that means as close as possible to daylight, and then quite special reflectors so the light could travel its path. Needless to say, the devil is in the details, but the principle was incredibly simple. How does a beam of light behave, and what are its baths? Let me try to explain it like this. We have a room with a window, our set. We have a day with a clear sky, our field light. And the sun is shining through the window into the room, our spotlight. What does a ray of sunlight do when it comes in through the window? It strikes first, let's say, the white wall embrasure of the window frame. From there, it splits up and goes in several directions further into the room. Hits the wooden floor, spreads out further and picks up the warm color tone of the wood, striking next the face of the actor, who is sitting on a table. All the other rays of light coming through that window also behave in the same way, being shaped and directed via the surfaces present. And the actor's face looks really good, and the room around him also good, because all the directions are correct, because the decline in intensities towards the inside of the room is true, because the quality of the shadows and the shadow zones are right, because the involvement of all the materials in the room adds up. Now suddenly my camera can look in every direction and everything is okay. I don't need to correct anything. And only now, at least, I'm free to start to create. I don't want to say that we just have to imitate the nature, but it's a healthy basic. When I know and respect the ways of light, it can be used to wonderful effect and are incredibly flexible and variable. Little is lost, efficiency and quality is high, light can flow and work unimpeded. And suddenly I need much less equipment and significantly less energy. I have a light source that doesn't change and mostly does not need to be directly on the set. And I have small light-white reflectors that are the light-shaping elements. It can be placed with minimal effort.